We have suffered through an insane amount of games to find out the 5 best underrated champions in the current patch, so let's get right at it. For the first one we have Dr. Mundo in the Baron lane. This champion scales very well to the later stages of the game, as well as good lane dominance. The one thing that most players don't understand about Dr. Mundo is that he features Poke with his cleaver, which is super high magic damage as it's based on the enemy's current health, and the percentage value is pretty damn high. The next thing is about his sustain. If you get into a situation where the Mundo fights you 1v1, his second ability will sustain him brutally. The healing and bonus damage part will basically out-sustain anything you do, therefore forcing you to buy anti-healing for your very first purchase. Otherwise, the latest on level 5, you'll be in deep trouble. Next to this, even if you're hiding behind minions, which you should be, Mundo can hit you with his third ability as he tosses the entire enemy minion if the minion dies right into your face, slowing you down and dealing massive amounts of damage to you. Afterwards he can then run after you to toss his cleaver into your face again, then run you down. This is very problematic, especially if you think about the ability of his to go into full tank yet damage itemization. Items such as the Searing Crown and Sunfire will allow him to be tanky enough to just kill you wherever he pleases. Next to this, the AD conversion from his ultimate will allow him to just kill you whatever he wants to do. It doesn't matter because you don't have any chance. Next to this, Mundo's ultimate ability isn't necessarily coded as healing, at least for the initial cast. It will just increase his health. Therefore, if the Mundo waits until he's low HP to press his ultimate ability, he'll regain a big portion of his already lost life and then turn the fight into your face. He'll gain a massive amount of AD, and then his auto attack reset with his third ability, in combination with his first ability's bonus maximum HP damage, well, current HP damage, will literally send you to the Shadow Realm within a second. The next underrated champion is Singed. Even though his laning phase is one of the most terrible things in the game, you can still win it because people are simply not good enough. One of the things that makes Singed so special is his ability to just run away from problems, and many people for whatever reason chase problems, and the same applies to Singed. Whatever they do, they will always end up in his poison trail and slowly get themselves killed. It's literally all by choice. The only play that Singed has available for him, for example during the laning phase, is walk into the wave, use his poison ability to kill the minions, and then be gone. However, if the enemy champion takes second wind and is able to fight back early game because of another ability, then the Singed player will just die, and there's not much you can do about this. However, if you get to survive this part of the game, you can accelerate the game by using strategic roams. Your champion can be very proactive on the map, can go for dives and set up other people, and just use movement speed as the primary stat to get things going. If there's one thing a Singed player should always look out for, it's the primary enemy carry on the enemy team. If you see an enemy AD carry, you always want to target him and flip him right into the heart of your team to then get him killed. This is your entire job while wreaking havoc around the entire battlefield. Running around, applying poison to everyone, buying some things like Anti-Heal or Ryle's Crystal Scepter, you'll apply utility and just be annoying. Your damage will not be obnoxiously high, however they won't kill you instantly, and if you get to live long enough, your damage will surely ramp up over time. But don't get baited by items such as Liandry's Torment, because as of now this item is not very good for you. The reason is the following. The item requires too much AP to deal substantial amounts of damage. However, the other item which you can go for, which would be the Searing Crown, would deal equal amounts of damage while providing you with resistances in terms of armor and more health than Liandry's could ever do. So don't let yourself get baited into going full AP Singed, but it's fun, however you'll just die and it's not worth the hassle. Next on this list we have a champion that is constantly underestimated, which is Kennen. But there's one thing that many Kennen players don't really know about, and it's running the Riftmaker setup. If you're playing into tanky champions or bruises, the Riftmaker first item can make or break you the game. The bonus damage and sustain you gain from this item, plus the pre-mitigation damage, because don't forget it's 9% of the pre-mitigated damage, will take over the laning phase for you. Adding runes into the mix such as Conqueror and Brutal will make your laning phase even more brutal and abusive. Enemy champions cannot really fight into you because all you have to do is use your third ability to just run away, and if they get hit by your first ability too many times, things are looking really bad. Another trick Kennen players can utilize is pre-stacking their second ability's passive on minions, to then use the empowered auto attack on an enemy champion, to then use the active part of the second ability as well to deal a quick trade and big amount of damage to the enemy champion. If you repeat this once or twice, you'll get the enemy into a lethal threshold, which then allows you to just kill them. With that in mind, you will then gain access to turret platings, minion waves, and you are allowed to snowball the game. Now, with that in mind and that being done, your champion is not necessarily a split push champion, which means if you get a lane during the laning phase and get access to turret platings and get a lot of gold, you will then translate this lead into a teamfight situation. For this, and to do this the most proper way, is having access to your flash ability. If you don't have flash, then things get a little bit more troublesome as you have to look for a flank. But if you have flash, you can just ultimate right into the enemy heart of the team and then get everybody blown up. Ideally, if you can pre-stack even your Rift Maker beforehand by hitting the enemy with the first ability, then being sure that you're in a combat, and then the bonus damage will take care of the enemy team, as your damage will absolutely go crazy. But there's still one thing that can absolutely destroy all of your engages, and that's the exhaust button. With this in mind, you have to be very smart about how you can use stasis, because with stasis you can actually avoid the enemy's exhaust. If you're fast enough into full combing into the enemy team, then you can avoid the exhaust button, which means all your damage will not be mitigated. Our next champion is not necessarily as underrated as people believe, but he's way stronger than people make him out to be, especially during the early stages of the game. Many people say that a tank champion doesn't do anything in early game, however Rammus is kind of different. With just a cloth armor at his disposal, he is able to take on a Lee Sin during the early game. The reason is the following: having access to Aftershock and his second ability in combination with his taunt will literally make a Lee Sin kill himself. The damage Rammus then deals with auto attacks and the damage that's reflected towards the Lee Sin are simply too high for the Lee Sin to take on. That is the case if the Lee Sin obviously takes the fight. He can just run away from you, which is something you have to keep in mind because Lee Sin is way more agile and mobile than you'll ever be. On top of that, there's one thing that makes Rammus even stronger than many people believe. It's a tank and therefore he will always have certain types of values, but Rammus in general is a champion you want to pick into AD carry centric constellations which feature a lot of physical damage. With boots such as plated steel caps and thorn mail, you'll literally turn into an invincible bulwark of suicide for the enemy team. Anyone you just taunt on the enemy team, be it an AD carry or anything else that does physical damage, will kill themselves to you. And it's just so easy to pilot, there's not much for you to do, and your ganks are way better than you expect them to be. The speed you roll into lanes with is super high and people are generally oblivious as to what's happening on the map and therefore netting you with free kills all over again. It's just a jungle conundrum. People have no clue what happens if you happen to vanish into Fog of War because of the lack of object permanence. They have no idea that if you leave, you can just come back, and I'm serious with that. For our last champion, I really want to talk about Tryndamere. Tryndamere is getting constantly undervalued for what he is. He gained so many different buffs and changes to his kit that he's just so much stronger than he was ever before, especially with the new rune system. Having access to Navori Quick Blades, Phantom Dancer, so much crit, so much cooldown reduction, and so much bonus damage turns it into something that you need to have on your mind. He will take down towers, he will take down team, and the only thing he really struggles into is heavy crowd control. And even then, you can take Legend Tenacity and Perseverance if you really want to, and therefore avoid most of it. Nonetheless, you probably still need Quicksilver, because otherwise you won't be able to move. But the biggest enemy of a Tryndamere will be getting kited and crowd control, and if you really need the items and things I mentioned beforehand. But one of the greatest benefits that Tryndamere offers for you is the ability to dive people. Thanks to his ultimate ability, he'll live another 5 seconds and therefore allowing you to dive people super easily without any risk involved. With that in mind, you can snowball games super easily. You can rotate towards the middle lane, dive the mid lane, you can go dragon lane, kill the dragon lane, you can do whatever you want with your team if your team is on the same page, which is probably the biggest problem. Alternatively, there is a way of playing Tryndamere that you can think about. Take Demolish and go for Hullbreaker later on and just take over the side lane. Take down anything in terms of towers and never stop split pushing. Don't care what's happening on the map, if you can't save your team, don't even try and continue marching down towards the enemy nexus. And that's pretty much it for today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel and come back for more RiftGuides content.